Renewed Mind Revolution Podcast. A place that empowers, encourages, and informs. We're breaking through, we're rising strong. A brand new mindset where we belong. Empowered voices, hearts aligned. Encouraging truth, renewed in mind. It's the revolution. Let your spirit soar. We're here to lift you, to give you so much more. Encourage and power, informed with love. A renewed mind journey, grace from above. Stepping in a purpose of wisdom lead, planting the seeds of faith we need. Hope ignites and visions clear. The revolution's calling, we're here. Empower the new sons, where we belong. A renewed mind journey, grace from above. It's the revolution, let your spirit soar. We're here to lift you, to give you so much more.
Hello and welcome to Renewed Mind Revolution Podcast with your host, Michelle Cook Hall. As always, it is my honor and my pleasure to be able to come on here and share some tips and some tools with you that I know would assist you in becoming a better version of yourself. As promised, I have some very, very special guests today. Not only are they smart, but they are beautiful as well. And I'm so glad to have them all on here today to share with you a very, very hot topic that's happening right now in our country. They are a part of Educators Rise Voices of Change Anthology Volume 1. This is a collection of stories, insights from educators, leaders, and consultants transforming education through diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for those who haven't caught on, that is DEI. That is a hot topic happening right now in our country. They have shared their successes in this book, challenges, and lessons learned. Highlights the transformative impact of DEI initiatives on classrooms, professional development, and communities. Now, each one of these ladies, there's a total of 9, I believe, that's complete this project. It is spearheaded by one of my previous guests. Her name is Heather Robinson, and she brought these wonderful ladies to me today. So each one of these ladies have a background in education. So who else can tell us how impactful this is in our community and in our schools, in our everyday life? We have Dr. Tiffany Jones Fisher. We have Chanel Williams, Tammy Walsham. Hope I said that right. Okay. Dr. Alicia Broughton. Welcome, ladies, to Renew My Revolution podcast. It is really, really, for real, my honor to have you here today. Now, let's get started. Okay, so as I said, this topic is really important. Do you all agree right now in our society? This is a hot topic, right? I mean, we've seen some changes happen very quickly in our country about this particular topic. Now, this particular book is not available until April, right? But right now you out here trying to let everybody know, hey, this is what's happening, this is what's going on. And let me ask you something. Let's start with Dr. Tiffany Fisher. I'm just gonna single you out. Why was this project why was this project important to you to be a part of?
Well, I mean, of course, anytime that I have the opportunity to share my experiences, tell my story is always an opportunity. But DEI in particular is important to me. Working in education, you want to make sure that everybody has access, everybody gets opportunity, whether you're talking about a student, a teacher, a parent, whomever. So that was why I wanted to contribute to this work.
Okay. What about you, Dr. Alicia?
I have been a principal and I've been working in public education this is my 29th year from pre-K to 12th grade. And throughout my years of teaching experience, people think that DEI just is basically off of color, but it's not. There's a lot of components to DEI, like which is affecting right now our kids with IEPs, individuals with disabilities, and myself. I am an African American, well-educated, educator, but I do also have accommodations for me. So 3 years ago, I had breast cancer and it went to my brain. So as a result of that, I fell under DEI because I completely went blind in both of my eyes for a period of time. And as you all know, as African American educators, we already have a difficult time in the workplace. So when it was found out that I needed disabilities or accommodations, it became even more difficult. So when I saw the project, I said, I definitely have to be a part of the project. And I said, to me, DEI is aimed to create a welcoming and supportive environment for people of all backgrounds, color, and creed, not just one group of people. And I said diversity, recognizing and evaluating the differences among people. We are different, but we are still one. No one should be treated any different. Acknowledging that people have unique skills, experiences, and most definitely perspectives, meaning we can agree to disagree.
Right.
Equality, ensuring that people have what they need to succeed. And also sharing resources and opportunities and opening up doors and creating fair and just policies and procedures for those that may be affected or need DEI.
Right. So the one thing that you said that stuck out to me is that, and I know this to be true because I've heard it, is that people assume that DEI was about color, right? And
yes,
your personal experience is letting those who can hear this know, no, it covers a lot more than, and then hearing IEP, right? That's important
yes.
too, right? And so I'm hearing that, and you never hear that when they're talking about DEI in workplaces. And to be honest, nobody brings up DEI when it comes to classrooms. I'm gonna be really honest with you. When you hear it in the media, have you ever heard them bring up what happens in the classrooms? No. But I do understand what you were saying too, Tiffany, Dr. Tiffany, excuse me, regarding regarding I'm thinking as far as making sure that all schools are treated fairly. Okay, I'm thinking that all schools are treated fairly, and we don't see that often, right? So why should any of our children suffer based upon maybe a zip code or a community, right? That they just happen to be in. So I heard that from both of you all, and I've never heard that perspective yet. I know it's true, but we haven't heard them brought that up. What about you, Tammy Walsham?
Hello. So for me, it's very interesting because I've worked in predominantly white schools for majority of my educational experience. This is year 24 for me. But I've been a special education teacher for the last now 9 years. So I've been able to see DEI in very different aspects when it comes to education. And so I feel like, it is something that people don't necessarily understand. I was having a conversation with my brother, and he said, well, I never heard about DEI when I was in school. And I said, well, students typically don't really understand DEI. They feel the effects of it without knowing that they're feeling the effects. But as educators, we see it firsthand, and we see where there are discrepancies, where things are not happening, where things are not in place. And we see how it can have effects on students and even on families, and just overall in any educational aspect. So I felt this was really important. Once again, like I said, because I am looking at things not just from myself being an African American educator, but also that I'm an African American special educator. So there's a lot that I've been able to see, especially with IDEA, and just a lot that's going on right now. So when she said about IEPs, I was just kind of smiling because that's what I do all the time. So I think that any way that we can educate people on things that they really need to be more aware of, it can really help to make things a lot better. When there's a lot more understanding about things, it can really help to build bridges and make connections that may not have been there before.
All right. So what's interesting is that when people think of DEI, we always go immediately to a workplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they think that, based upon the concept of DEI, people are unfairly getting promoted or getting employment or getting all this. And they think, oh, well, get rid of that. Yeah, because now you're hiring people who are not qualified, right? But they don't understand what you all are saying so far is that this concept is not just a workplace concept.
Right.
I mean, you're affecting your children. You might not know what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying, Tammy, is that your kid might not know, you might not know, but in the
Right.
background, DEI
Right.
is helping your child.
Right.
If your child, is having any type of issues, and sometimes, to
Mm-hmm.
be really honest, when your children, I have 3, they're grown now, thank God. But when they were coming up, there were struggles that was there.
Mm-hmm.
2 of my children, and I became an advocate, really early because I was taught to be an advocate. But just understanding that they had that opportunity to get services and the things that they needed that they probably wouldn't have been able to, even anybody would have even checked in the first place. They probably would not even given them an opportunity to get these type of services that
Right.
are affordable to them,
Right.
if this wasn't in place. Is that what you're kind of saying, correct?
Yeah, and then the interesting thing is that, as a special education teacher and even a general education teacher, you see there are students that don't necessarily qualify for services
Yeah.
because they may not have that disability, but those accommodations are things that can allow them to access the curriculum and all kinds of other things that they need in order for them to be able to be successful. So, DEI is just such a widespread thing, and it's so we definitely need to have a very big and broad understanding of exactly what it is so that we can understand what kind of things can we put in place to make sure these things are being addressed the way that they need to be addressed in every aspect. So not just like you were saying in the workplace, but
Right.
also in the educational space.
Right. And this what this book is specifically about in the educational work in the educational world, period. It's right. We're,
Yes.
we're looking from that perspective in this book because like I stated, I never heard that. I never heard anybody bring that particular perspective out. And I think that's important for people to know, but they might not understand it now, but I guarantee you they're going to feel it really soon. Chanel, what about you, Chanel? Tell me, why did you think it was important for you to play a part in this? So far, I think a pretty good project.
For me, it seemed interesting at the time. So just a little bit about me. I'm not originally from the US,
Okay.
so I am from Barbados. And so I tell people I grew up around Black excellence, a predominantly Black country. Right now, we have a Black prime minister. And therefore, to come into a situation where Black and being a woman was a thing. And navigating those spaces, not only for myself, but for my students as well,
Yeah.
was a struggle. And we talk about DEI, and we talk about not understanding it. But my question or my reflection a lot of times is, do people really want to understand it? A lot of times I feel as though there's a comfortability in equating it to Blackness, or akin it to Blackness, or akin it to qualifications, not realizing, as the others have said, there are many aspects of it. And so being a special education teacher as well, I saw how DEI projects, for instance, help my students. I saw how, you know, in spaces where people with the knowledge to be able to pour into children, because when we talk about children and we talk about pouring into children, sometimes being the minority in a school becomes a problem,
Yeah.
not only for teachers, but for staff as well.
There is a difference, and you feel the difference. There's a difference in the pouring in, the building, and the level of self-esteem that children get.
Mhm.
And I saw it firsthand. So when I saw the project, I was like, you know what? Let me just jump on, learn,
Mhm.
and share. And hopefully, from my experience, some person can learn something, because you can't fault a man for not knowing,
Mhm.
not fault a man for not understanding, but
Right.
you can fault a man for not seeking out the knowledge
Right.
that is needed
Right. It's
for him to,
responsibility there.
yes, exactly, for him to pursue, for him to be better, and for him to do better, not only for himself, but for his children. All of us have kids. All of us hopefully will have grandkids. So we need to build, and we need to be better for everyone.
Yeah. I took some key points from what you said. Um, the first thing was, do they really want to know? Okay. And I think about, ignorance can be bliss, right? If I don't know, then I don't have any accountability. I don't have any guilt because I don't know. But it's a choice. It's a choice. People learn what they want to learn. That's just a fact. They seek out what they want to learn, what they want to know more of. A lot of times they just really don't want to know. Now, did I know the extent of what DEI was in the classrooms? Well, one experience that I had was a teacher telling me that how back in the day, I'm a little older but not that old, but back in the day when a kid had like learning disabilities, they would separate them from everybody, right? And the kid felt isolated, and the kid was often made fun of and all of these things like that. So she was telling me, oh, it's not like that anymore. Sometimes they bring the services inside the classroom. The kid get to stay in the classroom. But this is from the district that I'm at. They get to stay in the classroom, and they still get the same services, but they're still a part of that main, classroom. So if they need speech or little assistance with reading, so while the class is reading, they're like reading along with that kid in the class and helping them and assist them there. I think about inclusive, being inclusive in that type of way, where a kid is not isolated, not made fun of, or being, separated from their peers, felt to, being different, but they're able to come in and, and participate in their class but still get the services that they need. And I also think about what was said earlier, which is sometimes a kid might not need as much assistance, and so therefore they would get ignored, right? They might need a little reading assistance, maybe, but they're enough to get by. But because of these type of programs, they're able to, no, we got resources for them too. Not just somebody who's really, really struggling, but you might be, borderline. We can put you in here too and get you some assistance and some help too, as long as your mother agree, your father agree, your parents agree, whatever. We can get you the same type of assistance that we, would give somebody else. So these are things that I started thinking about that I saw while I was, raising my kids and, in elementary school, watching that type of assistance being given to children inside the classrooms. And some kids were not able to really verbally speak, but they were still in the main classroom. They weren't separated or anything. They just had someone that was there with them to assist them, and they're part of the class. When I was coming up, that was just something that didn't happen. Kids were separated. There was, isolated. You didn't even see the kids, you didn't even see them. But to put them all together, making them a part of the community and being a part of everything, I think is a major change that I see when I think about some of the things that you guys have been saying. Am I right or am I wrong?
I think you are hitting the nail on the head.
Okay, okay,
Um,
okay. Help me out.
if you guys know of the movie American Horror Story, they talk about Willowbrook State School in Staten Island.
Mhm.
And if you guys remember the history of that school, that's exactly what will happen. Though the children were taken there, in many cases they were not taken care of. They were abused.
Mhm.
And so for us to be now in 2025, when it is this push for inclusivity, and the children not only have the IEPs, but they have the 504s. And so now you're seeing children being the best they can be. You're seeing children with disabilities going to Berkeley College, going to Yale, Harvard.
Yeah.
And it was just for us to do the humanistic thing and put in those supports and help the kids to be the best that they could be.
Yeah. Yeah. And what lesson is that teaching the other kids around them though, as well? You know, the community lesson that is being taught to the kids who are in the classes, and they're able to see, you know, the assistance, the help, but yet being taught, you know, how we help each other, how you are to not, you know, make fun, because in our society, everything is people mistreating people, people being disrespectful to people, laughing at anything that looks or sounds different to you. So you want to talk about teaching kids how to function in a community. That's a very plain example and right in your face. This is community. We're helping, we're assisting, we're showing them, you know, we are respecting them. You know, you dare not stare or laugh or any of those things in this environment. You know, so then when if a kid is taught that inside of a classroom environment, when they get outside that classroom, that remains the same. A lot of kids, unfortunately, in their homes are not being taught the basics, right? Of, you know, you don't disrespect, you don't, you know, make fun, you don't laugh, you don't stare. You know, these are all things that we were taught, what I was taught when I was growing up. You just don't be disrespectful. And so a lot of kids are not being taught that in their homes. And unfortunately, you know, it seems like now the schools are pretty much raising the kids, right? That's what my mom used to say. You know, it's a lot of raising of your children in these classrooms, right? And what's so funny is it seems that they spend so much time with you guys that, you know, sometimes they look to you more than they would look to those that are at their homes. That some of the joke my mom used to make is that they'll slip up and call her mom a mama, because you know they spending more time with her, you know, throughout the day, and then there's a respect there as well, right? Dr. Alicia, you're really quiet over there. What do you have to say about this so far?
So, like I said, I've taught pre-K to 12th grade. So this year, my current job is a little bit different because now I'm in a juvenile detention center.
Okay.
So my component in the book, I'm talking about how DEI has affected students within the prison system. So some of the things that I wrote down, examples of DEI in schools that I personally use, is like teaching diverse perspectives, like having different perspectives and using different types of curriculums. Like right now, I would say probably about 40% of the students that I work with have IEPs. Not only do they have IEPs, but part of DEI is also mental health and rehabilitation awareness, which we so heartedly forget about. Most of our kids that have IEPs have some type of learning disorder, or they're going through some type of mental trauma. So we forget all about that. If funds are pulled for that, what's going to happen to some of our kids? What's going to happen to those kids that need that food? Some kids take food home every night or on the weekends, and that may be their only time that they're able to eat. What about the after school programs? That's an empowerment for the kids to get help with their homework. What about those kids that are getting van services to and from school because they can't ride the buses? What about the kids that are simply not able to understand because they have their mental health or disability has not been diagnosed? So I also said hiring diverse groups of staff, creating a welcoming environment. So with me, I talk to my students about what it's like in the real world, daily tasks. Okay, when you leave here, what does it look like for you so you're not going back on the streets, so that you're not selling drugs again? What does it look like? Can you set up a checking account? But just giving kids the tools that they need. I said building empathy. That's part of DEI is too. Is building empathy, understanding others' challenges, because we really don't know what people are going through. We need to sit down and figure out what the challenges are.
Mhm.
I said, preparing for a global world, understanding global issues and diverse cultures. So right now we're on our Black History unit, but we talked about the Holocaust. We talked about Jewish. We're getting ready to talk about immigration. So in my classroom, I'm giving the kids a snippet of different cultures. Like we talked about people that come from Mexico, but just giving kids a different holistic approach besides their own communities and neighborhoods. I talked about the STEM program. My daughter's a kindergarten teacher, so I talked about the STEM program and how science and social studies link together collaboratively, or educating our kids more.
Yeah.
Teaching kids about the past is very frequent, is very needed. And I also said recruiting students to not only go to like charter schools, but so kids are intermingled also, maybe in schools that are maybe predominantly Caucasian as well. Shaping campus culture, encouraging career advancement, setting up tenure, employee benefits, creating culture, respect, and inclusion, and policy changes. So some of the other things that I wrote down for me for juvenile detention, I said DEI protects the rights of our students. Even though the students have committed a crime, it protects the rights from those that may mistreat them or sexually abuse them. I said rehabilitation. I said community health. While they're incarcerated, they're getting community health. They're able to go to the doctor while they're waiting to get sentenced. We have a holistic approach. So they get rehabilitation, they get job coaching, they get life skills, they get mental health awareness. And we talk about how to reduce poverty in their life, which is part of DEI. And so one night per month, we have the whole family that comes in, and we teach classes to the families of how they can sustain and how they can keep their children from being incarcerated. I said, and just giving out public resources. Knowledge is power. We can't expect people to even understand DEI if they're not educated on it. I said, and also being compassionate. What can we do in our communities to educate others? So that's just some of the things that I had down. I said, raising awareness of the challenges faced by those that are in our judicial system. It's so many kids that are in the judicial system right now. I was looking at the statistics, which is in my chapter. And when I was researching, I'm actually doing another dissertation on this. So it said 47% of African-American males that are incarcerated are males or African-American with learning disabilities or mental health issues. And that's the onset of why they committed the crime. So what are we going to do about this? We definitely have to teach our children the rights and wrongs. Unfortunately, a lot of our kids don't have good parents, may not have good parenting skills, but just to be an educator, to teach a student is phenomenal. I said involving people with history of the judicial system, providing fair access to education and employment and housing. So one of the barriers in DEI with young men that are incarcerated, when they get out of the juvenile detention center, when they get 18 and they're released, sometimes their record is not always sealed. So they can't find housing because they have a record. They can't find a job because it's on the record. And they can't get it expunged off depending on the crime. And I said, making sure that everyone feels they belong. Some days, some of the kids, I try not to worry about what the crime is. I don't even want to know because I don't want to be judgmental. But I say as a mother, all I can do is give them love. And part of DEI is loving all our kids in our classrooms.
Very good, Dr. Alicia. You had a whole lot in you to share with us today. She was ready, and I appreciate that. You was ready. And you know what, Dr. Alicia, what you don't know is that I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. So as soon as you said,
oh, wow.
Right, as soon as you said juvenile justice, I was like, oh,
yes,
my ears perked up. I was listening. I got you. Yeah. So, a lot of things that you said stood out with me. I'm thinking about going back to the IEP. It's a trickle effect, right? So a lot of kids are not getting the IEPs, right? They're not, no one's noticing that they need the services, right? They're not getting that. And so by you saying 47% of the Black men have learning disabilities. Is that what you said? 47%.
Mhm.
And so it goes to a trickle effect. If no one is, calling it out, and saying, hey, there's something, different, something's going on with this particular kid, and let's get them the resources that they need. It sounds like DEI, one of the major functions of DEI is in the school system for sure, is resources. It's giving them a lot of resources that they normally wouldn't get if they didn't have this in place. And what I'm hearing is, if that is not in place, there is a trickle effect. Now, everybody has the educational background, but when we get to Dr. Alicia, we see what happens when it's not in effect. They end up where she's at, and she has to reinforce everything that was not given to them in the classroom environment. And I'm seeing like a trickle effect there. If they're not getting these resources, and I'm kind of concerned now, Dr. Alicia, Dr. Fisher, Chanel, and Tammy. I hope you don't mind, I'm calling y'all first names. But I'm kind of concerned now that they have completely wiped out of our system, out of the funds, out of the funding, DEI. What happens if Dr. Alicia now is saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm experiencing with these young people who are in the system. Okay, this is what I'm seeing. They are, they have mental health issues that is not being diagnosed. It's not, even in classrooms, in the community, it's just not being diagnosed. They're not receiving services. And we know how it is. Unfortunately, in the Black community, mental health does not really exist. We're trying to push it now more than we've ever pushed before. But, the thing was, Black people don't go to a therapist. Black people don't talk about mental health. They, you just don't talk about it. You just don't, and you're suffering. They're suffering. So what I know from my little area of expertise is that when someone is suffering from something and it goes undiagnosed, something happens to them. It's called an outlet. Wherever way that comes out, it's gonna come out. Okay, and it's not gonna be anything good, right? They're gonna get it out. Whatever it is, it's gonna come out, but it's not gonna be good. And so that's what I'm concerned for our society right now, is that if they're where they have taken it away, our children, now this is our future. Now we're talking about in the classroom. You all are the experts, and you're seeing what happens, right? I always say what I find to be a very dangerous person is a person who has no hope, right? And so if you start taking like the food, the lunch, right? Because if you start taking away the resources of making them not feel as if they're so different than everybody else. So they're getting the speech, they're getting the reading, because some kids avoid reading in front of everybody because they can't read, right? So now you just took that away from them, right? What do you think happened to a kid? They become bitter, they become angry, they become mad. They start distancing themselves, correct? They don't want to participate. What's wrong with them? Is something wrong? Yes, something wrong with them. They feel different. They're isolated now. Everybody's staring at them. If I'm stuttering while I'm reading, I don't want to read out every word. I'm stuck. So if they taking that out of the classrooms, what do you all, every one of you all can answer this. What do you think is going to happen in our school system once this is no longer going to be an option for them? Now I'm hearing some other areas that I did not even really know, that I didn't think about. I didn't think about, the certain resources that's been mentioned tonight. Some resources I didn't think of. So you all tell me, because you all are the experts. Okay, I'm counting on you to tell me and my listeners, what do you think is going to happen to the young people who are in your classrooms, who you watching them every day going through the halls and coming to your room, coming to your classroom to get these services and these things? What do you think is going to happen to them? Dr. Tiffany Fisher, let's start with you.
So, in my opinion, because I'm looking through a different lens with this whole project. I'm an administrator.
Okay.
And when we talk about, you said, what do you think is going to happen? In my opinion, what's going to happen is these schools are going to look a lot like our government, meaning that there's one type of leader in our government. He's white, he's male. He may or may not have struggled, but if he had struggled, then some kind of way he came into money. Or we get the cookie cutter minority that may be a part of it as well. And so my lens that I looked through in the book, it talked about being, and it was, you know, my personal experience being in the same room with women that look like me, but we having such diverse backgrounds, experiences, education, and then not necessarily making the same decisions or making decisions that include DEI because we're educated, you know, different children, but the policies, the rules, everything that's in place kind of restricts some of the things that we're doing, all the way down to something as small as the dress code. So that was the lens that I looked through because I thought about, you know, we talk about diversity, equity, and education, but I was looking through the lens of this is someone that looks like me. This is someone who is educating students that look like me. And yet, because they don't have the same experiences, yet because they don't come from the same background, they have no idea how to serve the students that they serve. They have no idea how to serve the faculty and the staff members that count on them to make the best decisions. And they see things through their lens. So I tend to hire people who are going to be compliant with what it is that I'm already comfortable with versus people who want to collaborate. And I tell people all day long, collaboration is a lot more powerful than compliance because compliance gets you just what you ask. We're checking the box, but collaboration is proactive. It's what solves problems. It's what keeps things like we're experiencing now from happening. And so a lot of the things that we're seeing, this is systemic racism in its finest fashion because everyone that's making these decisions, they don't have a kid with an IEP. And if they do, they have the money and the resources to get whatever. But I know that my next door neighbor has a kid with autism and she's depending on people to make decisions because she can't do what needs to be done for her kid. And so when you talk about when we make these decisions, you got to think about who's there. And then if there are people that look like me who allowed them to be there, because that's the reason we have to have DEI. So that's my little spiel for now.
I like that. I was thinking about what you just said, and I'm like, that's true because, you know, someone else may have the funds to give services outside of the school. You know, I've seen the commercials. You know, they for the whole summer, their kids are in these special services that cost you an arm and a leg, right? But everybody can't afford that. They cannot afford that. So they look to their community schools to provide those services. That's very good. I like that. That's true. That's another thing that they're gonna feel it later, but they don't feel it yet. They don't feel that. What about you, Tammy? What do you think is gonna happen?
So it's very interesting because I'm a very empathetic teacher. And so I lived in California. I moved to DC about a year and a half ago. And so there were certain things that I put in place in the schools that I worked in because they weren't there. So for example, when I was talking to my brother, he did not understand what DEI was. He didn't know what it was. So I had to explain it to him. And I said to him, you know, even in the fact of when you have these after school activities, you know, the school that I worked, they had where the activities were very academically strong type of activities. So if you were strong in math, there was a place for you. If you were strong in science, there was a place for you. So there was that. And then the other extent of that was if you were athletically strong, there was a place for you too. So when you look at that, you look at where is it for the student who is not academically strong or not athletically strong? And so I took it upon myself to input some programs for those students so that they could feel like they have a place. And so one of the programs at the school I worked was BSU. We didn't have a BSU there. And so, you know, a lot of the students, you know, educators, we know that math and science are two of the subjects that students struggle in most times. And so that when that's there, but then they're not strong in those subjects and you're not someone who can do sports, where is there a place for you? So what I think may happen when things are taken away is that, you know, teachers, we already have a lot that we have to do. And, you know, anybody, not just teachers, but administrators too. When you are in that space, there's so much that is on your shoulders. You know, you're in that space, you're a teacher, but you're also a mother, you're a nurse, you have all these other titles that are not necessarily seen, but we see it when we see what the teacher does and the administrator does when they're interacting with the students. So the fact that things may get taken away, it makes me feel as though there's going to be even more put on the teacher to do with these students, more on the admin to do with these students, without them really taking the time to think about, there's a lot that we already have to do, but you're going to put more on us that we may not necessarily be able to do. So we may not be able to address the needs that we want to for those kids that really need it. And so, I said before that there are students that have IEPs that get services and get accommodations, but then you have those students that do not qualify. They may not qualify for a 504, may not qualify for an IEP, but we're able to give those accommodations. So then you have to look at, when things are taken away, what happens then with the students that need all that extra support. I mean, I've worked in a classroom where I had 6 students that were classified as ED students. And for people that work in education, you know that those students typically have very high behaviors. Language is very colorful. I say it that way. They have high suspension rates, and they have a hard time being in the classroom when it's a general education classroom. So for me, I had a classroom of 6, but yet because of the type of teacher that I am, I'm very empathetic. I treat each student as a person. I allow them to know me and my journey to teach, because it was one of the hardest journeys I've had to do. But each day is a brand new day. And so students, when they have an interaction with a teacher, some teachers are not able to put it to the side and allow them to come in the next day and approach it as a new day. And sometimes you have it where people will look and say, well, this is the history of the student and I want to know. So there's so many things that are in place now that are so advantageous for all students, not just the ones with IEPs, but every student in the space, whether you have mental health issues, whether you have a disability, whether you are struggling emotionally, whether it is a housing issue, no matter what it is, there's different programs that are in place for those students. So having those things taken away really just goes to really just saying that a lot of people really do not still understand what it is that teachers do, the capacity that we have, and everything that we take on, because it's more than just what you do in the classroom. There's so much more to what it means to be a teacher. When they say teachers are underpaid, they truly are underpaid, because there's so much that goes into really being that teacher that is the one that is memorable, that is really able to give the students what they need. Because I've been in the classroom where we didn't even get to a lesson because we're having a social emotional discussion every day in my classroom. I have a quote of the day every day. And it could be about accountability, patience, time management, all these different things, because these skills that these quotes are addressing are skills that students need to be aware of and understand. So taking things away just really just goes to show that you really don't truly understand how significant these things are, that the idea is you want to take something away that's advantageous, because the people that want to take the things away are the ones that don't have to do it. They don't have to deal with it. They don't have to deal with the results of what's going to happen down the road. So it's very easy for someone to take something away when they have no idea exactly how it is affecting students in a positive way. And so that's the scary part, I would say, for me, is because when somebody doesn't see that, they really just don't understand the long-term effects, like Dr. Alicia was saying, where students can end up in that space where they didn't necessarily need to be in that space had things been put in place. And so I think that had things not been put in place, that number, that percentage that she had would have been a lot higher. And so the fact that that percentage is where it is means that we still have work to do.
Yeah.
So seeing that we still have work to do, but the idea is to take something away, is really saying you really don't see the problem that this is addressing. You really don't see how things are going to go. So that's the scary part, I would say, of what may happen, is that there's so much workload, so much that is already being done, that now you're going to overload the teachers that are there. We have teachers that are leaving the profession at high rates.
Yeah, yeah.
And whenever I go into a school and I have an interview, one of my questions is does the school have a high teacher turnover? Because that is what you tend to see. And so even looking at that is something that needs to be addressed when we're talking about taking away these things that are just very helpful and needed in this space. So there's so many, it's almost like a domino effect in so many ways of the things that are going to happen down the line. So that's the scary part about it. That, you know, we're doing as much as we can, but sometimes it just doesn't seem like enough. But that may be a thing of the past in a negative way when things are just taken away.
Yeah, I honestly, Tammy, I don't think that those who are agreeing with the removal of DEI really understand what it plays in the school at all. I'm pretty sure that when they think in the DEI, all they thinking about is, you know, people of a certain color get certain positions based upon that. And that's it. That is it. They're not thinking at all that your child, which we know children of all nationalities have these disabilities and, you know, need these resources, because that's all I'm hearing is resources. You guys have no idea that you're about to lose all these resources in your schools, and it's going to impact your children. Now, if something should have been put on a big old billboard somewhere about DEI, it should have been that. It should have been that. You think that, you know, little buddy is hard to deal with now at home. Wait till the resources that we gave him at school is gone. You can't deal with him now. You will really struggle with him later. I don't think they understand that.
Right.
I really don't.
And that's the thing. I'm sorry. And that's the thing is that, like you were saying earlier, that a lot of times it's just this focus on the workplace, or not just the workplace, that maybe, you know, stores don't have certain things. So DEI is addressing that. But like you were saying, when it comes to education, it's almost like they think that that doesn't matter when it's so impactful in that space. And so I think that to really look at DEI and to really look at how significant it is, you really need to look at how many different spaces does DEI affect? Where does it? And I think that's what's not happening, is that you're looking at one aspect of it when you need to look at it in a bigger picture, but because DEI is a bigger picture.
No one is thinking thoroughly in this process. Let me throw that out there. There is no one thinking thoroughly or long term in this process that's going on right now, period. Dr. Tiffany, what did you have to say?
They're not thinking thoroughly because they see DEI as black and white. Case in point, think about the governor in Texas who was opposed to DEI, but you're in a wheelchair. Sir, you benefit from those services for that consideration. So I don't think it's that them not knowing. I think it's that as long as it's DEI means color, and DEI is so much deeper than that. And so you're right. They do not understand the ramifications of the decisions that they're making until it starts to affect them. And I guarantee you, once it affects them, it's going to come back. It won't be DEI anymore. It'll be cleverly disguised as something else, because how dare you attack our rights? We didn't know that you were going to attack us. It's going to cleverly come back as something else.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about it. Critical race theory. Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, all of that.
That's not true. Wait a minute. Why is he no longer qualified for this service? What do you mean, ma'am? It falls under something that no longer exists. We have no funding for it. We have no staff for it. We have no resources for it. I'm so sorry. What do you mean? I'm sorry. They're going to be so upset. So
there's no career coaches to navigate your baby to college as a first generation person. So again, it's not going to hit home until it affects them and them being that right person. And then DEI will come back and be something else altogether. But we know it's still DEI.
I agree. They'll give us another name that's, more comfortable for them to sit with. Tammy, you got something else you want to say?
Yeah, so it's interesting because so there's the aspect that I look at things as far as it not being taken away. And I definitely agree with everything that Dr. Tiffany said. What I think is that So like I'm very much, I don't believe in coincidences about anything. And so I feel like, unfortunately, sometimes certain things have to happen in order for somebody to see something that they didn't see before.
Yeah.
So like she was saying, they just see black and white, and they don't necessarily see how it may impact them, even though it does. So when something like this happens and they see the effects, this might be the one thing that it really opens their eyes to understand this is not a black and white issue.
Right.
This is so much more than that. And so it really takes you being able to see how it affects you on a personal level in order for something to click and things to make sense and say, okay, wait a minute. That's not what it was. This is actually what it is. What I thought it was is not what it is. And so I think it takes something like this for people to really just open their eyes and understand that it's not about black or white. That's not what it's about. It's about that people have needs. Right. And certain things are addressing those needs. It's not about whether you're black or white or you having a disability. There's so much more encompassed in that. And so maybe this is the thing that may open people's eyes to see, okay, wait a minute. There's a whole lot more to this that I didn't take into account.
Right.
And it may actually cause things to spiral in that way, but eventually spiral in the way that it needs to, for things to be addressed that may not even be addressed because people weren't seeing it before.
Right. It has
yeah.
to happen.
Yes.
I like that perspective that it had to happen in order for, things to be what it needs to be next. Chanel, what about you?
I think it would definitely make things more difficult. It would definitely make things a bit harder. But I believe that as a people, one thing we will do is endure. And therefore, I think that without those supports, we would find a way to make it happen. And I say this coming from a background where we did not have those resources, but we made it work. Yeah. There was many a evening, many a nighttime I stayed at school. There was nothing called per session. Sometimes the printer wasn't working. You had to buy your own paper. You had to drive to parents' houses. You had to bring children to school. And somehow we went into that classroom with those 30 children, with those differing abilities and disabilities, and we made it work. What is more, I think, difficult for me is the sense that it is almost as though, and I think you reference it. I've had a situation where I was in a predominantly Black school with Black students, and the whole issue of being afraid of being labeled, being afraid of, being afraid to seek out help was an issue. And that's why I think we really need to have some community work and parent workshops and really help the parents. And then a lot of times the parents are the ones who had the IEPs initially. So they are already struggling, and it's almost like I was labeled, I was disadvantaged. So now you're going to label my little Timmy and do nothing. He just a little hyperactive. When on the other end, predominantly white school, predominantly white students, the parents got every single service they could get. And you're talking about people with money. The people with money do not spend their money. They sue the state to pay for their children's education. So when you strip away and you take away all of these programs, when you take away Girls Club and Boy Scout and you name it, Most recently, they started work-based learning programs. When you strip away and you take away all of these things, it will definitely make it harder. And it would definitely mean that we have to pull up our boots and do more, because I do not understand why it would even come to this. Why we could not, or why we cannot make this work. Take DEI out of it. Take DEI completely out of it. All of us are living in a space where we deserve to thrive, where we deserve to do what we want to do when we want to do, without it having to be, oh, she's Black, or oh, she's white. So it would definitely make it harder. But let's see how it goes.
Well, what you're saying is what Tammy said, is that it's going to fall back on the teachers, the educators. Extra work, extra response. But in that, the reason why we don't even like large classrooms is because kids get lost in that. Somebody's getting neglected in that environment. It doesn't work. It doesn't. So that's why, people take their kids to private schools, right? Because you get the smaller classrooms and you get that one-on-one, more of an environment. So when you have to put so much on a teacher might miss somebody in there, because there's so many that are in there with these issues now, and then they're not able to give like this. How about this? For example, say that this kid is really good at academics, right? And even that kid should not be neglected, because now the teacher has to focus on this other student that is struggling. You understand? Are you all getting what I'm saying? That's what I think about too when I think about the resources being, taken out, and that, as Tammy's saying, it's all falling on the educator now, and that the teacher in that classroom, and not having the assistance and the help that is needed, is that it affects all the kids, is what I'm going to say. It's going to affect all of the children, because if Tammy's in the classroom and she has to, deal with like 5 or 6 kids who are struggling, the other child who really, is doing well, they're going to lose out as well, because her focus is going to be over there. There's a lot of assistant teachers in the classrooms, and everybody don't volunteer. There's actually people who come in and they get paid to be there to help, right? Because it's too much happening in the classroom. If you take that out, kids will be neglected. And so I kind of agree with what Dr. Tiffany is saying, is that I know that they don't think this is happening in their classrooms, in their schools. I'm just going to take that little guess and say, I don't think, not for 1 minute, they think that. I think what she said is true. They think white, Black. They think that people are getting promoted. They are getting jobs based upon a quota that these companies have to have, in order for them to get, federal funding and abide by the laws, right? So they take that out now, right? And they say now it's free for everybody. And everybody get to have a chance, regardless of what their, gender is, regardless of, their skin color and everything else. They don't have to go by quota. That's what they think of. And that's the end of the story. They're not thinking about, not even in the schools, but like even the resources in their communities that they won't get any longer. They're not thinking about that. It's so broad. It's so broad. And I love this. I'm going to be real honest. I love the perspective that you guys have brought today. I really, really do. I'm so glad that you guys were on here today. I really, really enjoy each and every one of you all. You are so unique, and your stories are also unique. Your personalities are absolutely beautiful. And I love every one of you all's story and the backgrounds that you have brought. I see why Heather chose you guys. You're pretty awesome. Okay. You're pretty awesome. So I do appreciate, what you brought today, because it made me think, to be really honest with you, about the impact I didn't think about that. I didn't think about that at all. To this level, I didn't think it touched so much in the schools. I know about IEP and all that, but I wasn't thinking about all of it. I wasn't thinking about what Dr. Alicia said at all. I didn't even think about that. I really didn't. So it touches so much. And once you did that, it made me start thinking, okay, how about resources that come to communities that, normally wouldn't get these resources because of where that community sits, right? But because of DEI, they are able to get these resources and all that to that community so they could be equal for everybody and nobody's missing out, right? You guys, you're doing pretty good. I appreciate that. I really do. So I want to give you all a chance to give some last words that you want to leave the audience with before we say goodbye. And tell them what whatever your last words are. It could be, whatever it is, just to let them know where you are and, in regards to DEI in the classroom. They're listening. So we'll start off with Dr. Alicia. Give your last words, and then after that, Dr. Tiffany, Chanel, and we're gonna close with Tammy. Is that okay? All right, Dr. Alicia, what is your last words for my audience?
I just want to encourage everybody to be steadfast and immovable, even though it may look like challenges, because I'm very, very spiritual, but I believe that God has a plan even in this. There is definitely purpose in our pain. Everyone's freaking out about DEI, but God has the last say. And while we're putting our trust in God, he's working behind the scenes. There's nothing too hard for God. That's the preacher in me. So tonight, I would just want to encourage everybody, when it looks like things are ending, remember that God is our source. I said, this doesn't mean that people will encounter ideals of views that make them uncomfortable. It means that all people will feel valued and everybody's voice will be heard. Inclusion also means different types of people and voices are included at the table when decisions are made. Education is an important part of our culture diversity. It allows us to find out who we are. We may not can solve the issue, but we are a piece of the puzzle. Each one of us ladies has something to bring to the table. Each one of our ladies has something to bring to our schools. So while we're here and it's talking about DEI, remember that you are a piece of the puzzle. Keep plowing. Don't give up. Be encouraged, don't quit, and remember, our kids need us.
Preacher. I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Alicia. My mom's a preacher too. So I feel you. I feel that teacher preacher coming out. I'm a preacher too, you guys.
And in closing, I have 4 books that are about to launch. So the books I have 7 books already published, but I have 3 kids books that are about to launch. Mm-hmm. So it's 3 different books pre-K. I Don't Need to Fit In is one of the books. Mm-hmm. The second book is Standing Up, but Standing Out is the second one. And the third book is Come to See About Me. And it talks about mental health and depression and suicide for kids at different levels. And the high school book is called Sinking While in High School. Please help me. So those are the 4 books that hopefully will launch.
And where will they be launched at, Dr. Alicia?
There will be on Amazon, Thrift Books, Barnes and Nobles. So they'll actually be on 30 different platforms, awesome. Bookstore platforms.
Congratulations.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Dr. Broughton, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Periscope, TikTok. I'm there someplace.
Are you on TikTok, Dr. Alicia?
I'm on TikTok. I do TikToks with my students.
I love that. Thank you so much. Please support Dr. Alicia, you guys. Dr. Tiffany Fisher, let's hear it.
So we're talking about DEI, and we're thinking, of course, us being Black educators, Black women. So DEI develop every individual. As educators, as women, as Black people, our birthright is building success. Everything that we've done has been met with opposition, with struggle. And so even though all of this is happening, we didn't only inherit our ancestors' struggle, we also inherited their tenacity, their strength, their ability to be innovative in any space. And so while this is a very uncomfortable space for us to be in as educators, we just got to press on and remember DEI, we're going to develop every individual. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
participating. Chanel, let's hear it.
I think a few things. I think firstly, we have to reflect on our own practices. And what I mean by that, we have to examine our own biases. We also have to diversify our materials. And I say this because a lot of times I have been in spaces where it seems as though the teacher does not understand the audience in which they're speaking to, especially when it comes to race and social injustice. I think we need to foster an inclusive environment, so that looks like encouraging open dialogue, setting clear expectations for respect, not only for ourselves, but for others, incorporating inclusive language, and being mindful of sometimes the terms and the language that we use around others and around our students, providing equal access to resources, and not only the resources that are made easily accessible to us, but giving students opportunities to do their own research and do their own learning. And I think we have to promote and empower our students to be leaders. One of the things that I appreciated at the last school I worked at is that they really push that whole sense of student leadership. So a lot of the programs and the different things that were going on in the school were actually run by the students. So I thought that was a really good thing. And finally, I think that we have to set measurable goals and also engage our community. The big piece of this whole thing, I think, is engaging the community, working with the families and the communities, and really helping them to understand, like the others are saying, what is DEI, how it helps, why it's important, what we can do with it, how we can make it better. And I think if we do all those things, hopefully it can be better. And since Dr. Alicia mentioned to you that she has some books, why not let me mention mine?
Yourself, girl. Go ahead.
Yes, so this is actually my second collaborative book. My first book is actually called Beyond the Classroom: To Teach or Not to Teach. So it looks at navigating spaces beyond the classroom, not necessarily leaving the classroom full time, but doing things like educational consultancy and those types of things. It's available, it's printed, it's waiting to be purchased.
Okay.
You can message me, I'll send you the link, but the link is pre-sale chanelwilliams.com. You can catch me I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. Yes, that's me. That's it.
All social media platforms.
Yes, all social media platforms. I think some person even sent me a request for lemon the other day.
Yeah,
So
I get those. So I just ignore it.
yeah, I was like, the only lemon I know is, the one I squeeze to make lemonade.
Like,
But
wait a minute, okay. Disregard. Okay.
yes.
Okay, Tammy, come on, let's hear it. Close us out.
There was something that Dr. Tiffany said earlier about collaboration. And I feel like, with DEI, I think we need to understand how significant collaboration is, especially in the climate that we're in right now. And they're trying to take DEI outside or just away from education, but it hasn't been taken away yet. So I think sometimes, when we hear about something, some people can have a defeated attitude as if it's already gone. And it is not gone yet. And so collaboration is something that can be really just instrumental in really just seeing what we can do in this time that we're going through. It's interesting because Dr. Alicia said that she's very spiritual, and I'm very spiritual as well. And so it's very interesting because, one of the things that I say is that where we see a barrier, God sees a pathway.
Yes.
So understanding, like, I talked yesterday during a Bible study that I was doing about how when they got to the Red Sea and it looked like there was just nothing, they couldn't go anywhere. They were stuck. And what they didn't know was there was a pathway there that they couldn't see. And that's the thing, is that God's able to see what we cannot see.
Come on here.
He is always in control. So when it seems like things are out of control, we just have to remember the one who is always and always will be in control. So I think if we need to take rest in that and take strength in that, knowing that that's what we need to put our trust in, especially in time when it looks like we don't know where things are going to go, because the reality is we don't know what's going to happen the next minute. But just remember that where we see a barrier, God always sees the pathway. So just trust in that and know that things will always work out exactly the way they're intended to. And along the way, it's not always going to look pretty. It's not always going to look great. But when it gets to where it's going to get there, we're going to see why it had to go the way it had to go. So I just trust in that. And that's what helps me to maintain a positive mindset a lot of times, especially in the educational space where there can be a lot of negativity. You have to find those things that you can rest in, that can keep you in a positive mindset, so you can take it through the day. Because one of the things we don't know is what other people are dealing with. And understand that just you being that positive person could be the one thing that really just allows that person to be turned around. So be the change that you want to see, and be everything that you can in any space that you can be. So, but yeah, I don't have any other books out like everybody else, but I'm very happy for the people that do.
I'm with some books, Tammy, so you can keep up with the rest
right.
Tammy was going to tell you Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you.
Yes. But yeah, so I mean, I am on Facebook and I'm on Instagram at First Lady Tammy 916. So I absolutely loved this podcast. Absolutely, I'm very excited about all of the authors that are in the book. I'm just excited about this journey that God has put me on, because God knew that, and that's an interesting thing if you think about it, that it's not a coincidence that this book is coming out when it's coming out.
It's not.
So that right there, even taking comfort in that, knowing that nobody would have known that DEI was going to be such a significant thing when this book is coming out. We didn't know that, but God knew that.
Yeah.
So God is taking steps and doing what He does best.
Very strategic.
So I'm just thankful that God knew this is what we needed. This is exactly what we needed. And I'm thankful for this podcast and this discussion, because I feel like this is exactly what people need in this time that we're in right now. So
God is
I didn't give any of my socials.
Come on, let's hear it. Come on, Tiffany, let's hear it.
I'm Tiffany Jones Fisher on Facebook, and then 1284 Education Consultants is my business page. And then on Instagram, I wear a cape, because I really wear a cape under this shirt. I wear a cape. Okay. So this has been phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh, thank you guys so much. I appreciate every last one of you guys. Like I said, I think y'all pretty awesome. I really do. And what I was trying to say was that God's very strategic in what he does. He doesn't make any mistakes. So it's not by accident or coincidence that we're here today together and that we're able to have this conversation. But what I do want to say is that you guys can play a pivotal part in the change that needs to happen. You are in wonderful, powerful positions. And not only that, but you all are powerful women. And so that you can help with your story. And I hope this will not be the last podcast that you all get to go on, and maybe even more national media platform. That's my prayer for you guys and Heather, because I think that this perspective absolutely needs to be heard. No one really thinks about this. And so I'm so glad that I got to get you first. So thank you for that, because this is going to make people think. And I think that we got done what we need to do today. So thank you, Dr. Alicia. Thank you, Dr. Tiffany. Thank you, Chanel. And thank you, Tammy, for coming on Renew Mind Revolution podcast. It has been my honor and my pleasure. And I thank you guys. Please remember, I love you, but God loves you more. God bless you guys.